It all started a few weeks ago when I moved into my new apartment. It wasn't the fanciest place, but it was quiet and cheap. I liked the idea of being on my own, away from the busy city. The building had this old charm, with creaky wooden floors and long, dimly lit hallways. The kind of place where the silence felt thick, almost like it was alive. I liked that at first, but then I started noticing things. One night, as I was heading home after a long day at work, I felt someone watching me. I shook it off at first, thinking I was just tired, but every time I passed by the corner of my street, I could feel eyes on me. You know that feeling, like someone staring at the back of your head? It made the hair on my arms stand up, but when I turned around, there was no one. The street was empty, quiet except for the soft hum of the street lights. That's when I first saw him. It was just a glimpse, really. A man standing at the end of the street, half hidden in the shadows. He wasn't moving, just standing there, watching me. I froze for a moment, my heart racing, but I told myself it was nothing. Maybe a neighbor, maybe someone waiting for a ride. I hurried inside and locked the door behind me. The next night, I saw him again. This time he was a little closer. Still standing in the shadows, still watching. I didn't stop to look. I just rushed into my building, telling myself it was all in my head. But the feeling of being watched never left. Days passed, and I saw him more often. Sometimes he was at the corner of my street. Sometimes he was across the road. Always in the shadows, always watching. I couldn't see his face, just the outline of his body. He never moved, never said a word. But I knew he was there. I tried to tell my friends, but they laughed it off. "You're just imagining things," they said. "You're probably stressed." And maybe they were right, but the feeling of dread grew stronger every night. I started avoiding walking alone at night, taking different routes home. But no matter what I did, I always saw him. One night, as I was unlocking my door, I heard footsteps behind me. My heart leaped into my throat. I spun around, but there was no one there. The hallway was empty. I hurried inside and locked the door, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was just on the other side listening, waiting. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. The creak of the floorboards, the rustle of the wind outside. It all felt too close, too real. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? That some man was standing in the shadows? That I felt like someone was watching me? They wouldn't take me seriously. Then, it got worse. I started finding things out of place in my apartment. At first, it was small stuff. A book on the table that I didn't remember leaving there. My shoes moved from the door to the closet. I thought I was just being forgetful, maybe too tired to remember where I put things. But then, one night, I found the window in my living room open. I never leave that window open. Panic set in. I rushed to close it, my hands shaking. Had someone been in my apartment? I checked all the locks, made sure the door was bolted. But the unease didn't go away. I slept with a knife under my pillow that night, but sleep didn't come easy. The next morning, there was a note on my kitchen table. My blood ran cold when I saw it. I didn't own any paper like that. The handwriting was messy, scrawled in black ink, "I'm watching you." I felt sick. How had someone gotten into my apartment? I checked the door, the windows, everything was locked. But someone had been in here. They had left me a message. I called the police. They came, checked the place, but there was no sign of forced entry. They told me to be careful, maybe install some cameras, but there wasn't much they could do. I felt helpless, trapped in my own home. That night, I stayed awake, listening to every sound, every creak. My apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in on me. I kept my phone close, ready to call for help if I needed to. But then I heard it. The sound of breathing. It was faint, just barely audible, but it was there. coming from the other side of the door. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I slowly got out of bed and crept toward the door. The breathing was louder now, steady, like someone was standing right outside. I held my breath, terrified to make a sound. I pressed my ear against the door, trying to make sure I wasn't imagining things. That's when I heard it. A soft whisper. "I see you." My blood turned to ice. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. I grabbed my phone and called the police again, my voice barely above a whisper as I told them someone was outside my door. They arrived quickly, but by the time they got there, the hallway was empty. The man was gone. The police searched the building, but they didn't find anyone. I was starting to feel like I was going crazy. Was I imagining all of this? But I knew I wasn't. The next morning, I found another note. This time, it was inside my bedroom, on my pillow. "You can't hide. I left the apartment that day and never went back. I packed a bag, booked a hotel, and started looking for a new place. I couldn't stay there, not with him watching, not with him knowing how to get inside. But sometimes, even now, I still feel like someone's watching me." It started out like any normal day. I was heading home after a long shift at the coffee shop, tired but relieved to finally be off my feet. I took my usual route through the park, a shortcut that shaved 10 minutes off my walk. The park was quiet at this time of night, with only the distant hum of the city and the rustle of trees in the wind. Peaceful, I thought, just what I needed after a busy day. But that night, something was different. As I walked along the narrow path, I felt it, that strange, unsettling sensation you get when someone's watching you. I glanced around, but the park was empty. Just the faint glow of the streetlights and the shadows they cast on the ground. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. My pace quickened, the gravel crunching louder beneath my feet. Then I heard it. Footsteps. They were soft at first, blending in with the sounds of the night. But the more I focused, the clearer they became. Someone was walking behind me. My heart began to race. I stopped for a moment, pretending to adjust my bag, and listened. The footsteps stopped too. I turned around, scanning the path. There was no one there. "It's just your imagination," I told myself. "You're tired. It's late." I shook it off and continued walking, a little faster now. But the footsteps started again, this time matching my pace. Each step I took, they took. It was as if someone was mimicking my every move, just far enough away that I couldn't see them. I tried to stay calm, but panic was bubbling up inside me. I was about halfway through the park when I made a decision. I'd turn around quickly and confront whoever was following me. Maybe it was just some jogger or a random person walking the same path, but I needed to know. On the count of 3, I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. No one. The path was empty, just as before. The shadows stretched long and dark, but there was no sign of anyone. I stood there for a moment, catching my breath, feeling silly. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, I'd walked this path dozens of times without any trouble. I turned back around, ready to finish the walk home, when I saw him. He was standing at the edge of the path, just outside the glow of the streetlight. A tall figure, cloaked in shadows, his face hidden in the darkness. I froze. He didn't move. He just stood there, watching me. My mouth went dry. I couldn't make out any details, but I could feel his eyes on me. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind raced with thoughts. Who is he? How long has he been following me? What does he want? I took a step back, and he took a step forward. That was enough to break me from my paralysis. I turned and sprinted down the path as fast as I could. My bag bounced against my side, and my breath came in ragged gasps. But I didn't dare stop. I could hear his footsteps behind me, fast and heavy. He was chasing me. I reached the edge of the park and darted onto the street. There were a few cars passing by, but no one seemed to notice me. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see him right behind me, but he was gone. The park was empty again, the shadows swallowing up any trace of him. I didn't stop running until I reached my apartment. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with the keys, desperate to get inside. Once I was in, I locked the door, double-checking it before collapsing on the couch. My mind was racing, replaying what had just happened. Who was that man? Why had he been following me? I tried to calm down, telling myself it was probably just some weirdo trying to scare me. I'd report it in the morning, maybe change my route home. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. There was something about the way he moved, the way he followed me in silence, that sent chills down my spine. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the apartment, every noise from the street, made me jump. I kept imagining him outside my window, standing in the shadows, waiting. The next morning, I tried to shake off the fear. I told myself it was a one-time thing, that it wouldn't happen again. But as I walked to work, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder every few minutes. The feeling of being watched lingered, even in broad daylight. Days passed, and nothing happened. I didn't see him again, and slowly, I started to relax. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe it really had been a one-time thing. But just when I thought it was over, the notes started appearing. The first one was taped to my front door when I got home from work. It was a simple note, written in messy, almost childish handwriting. "I see you." My heart skipped a beat. How had he found me? I hadn't told anyone about my apartment, and I had no reason to believe anyone had followed me. But somehow, he knew where I lived. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, trying to convince myself it was some sort of prank. But the notes kept coming. Every day, I'd find a new one, either on my door, slipped under the mat, or taped to my car. Each one had the same message: "I see you." I tried to ignore them, but the fear gnawed at me. I started taking different routes home, changing up my routine, but it didn't matter. The notes kept coming, and the feeling of being watched grew stronger. One night, after finding yet another note, I couldn't take it anymore. I called the police, but they didn't take me seriously. They said there wasn't much they could do without more evidence. I felt trapped, helpless. Then, one night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in my apartment. At first I thought I was dreaming, but as I lay there, holding my breath, I heard them again. Soft, slow footsteps, moving through the hallway outside my bedroom. I reached for my phone, my hands trembling, and dialed. But before I could press the call button, I heard a whisper from the other side of the door. "I see you." My heart stopped. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I grabbed my bag, threw open the window, and climbed out, running barefoot into the night. I never went back to that apartment. I packed up what little I could, moved to a different city, and changed my number. But no matter where I go, I still feel like someone's watching me. I can't escape him, because somehow I know he's still out there,